All right, I think we're live. Give me a second to get my bearings. All right. I'm doing this all alone, and I've never had like 4 simultaneous streams going on at the same time. Oh my god. My computer's flipping out. I think it's time to get a new one, don't you think? Okay. I see that people are already coming on. Stream health is very low on YouTube. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Just got to get one more window up, and then we'll get started. Hey, guys. I see a lot of people on Instagram already. That's awesome. Thanks for coming along, guys. This is Dave, by the way, solo. Join me. Oh, gosh. Nashville, Negan. We meet again. So the one thing I have to tell you guys up front about Instagram right now, I can't see emojis necessarily, but I'm assuming you're being really cool and nice. And I appreciate it. I appreciate that you guys are just here, and I'm swallowing my words already. Yeah, professional. You guys can hear me okay, right? I assume. Yeah, I guess so. I gotta start recording my audio. Oh, thank you, Caroline. That was the cheesiest thing I've ever done. Okay. Okay, just gonna start recording on my side piece. You know, my side piece. Yeah, okay. I'm taxing the system as it is. Okay. So you guys are seeing the screen constantly flash, right? This is what like a 7-year-old laptop computer from your office, so it's like really souped up. This is what it'll get you. But souped up 7 years ago does not a broadcasting laptop make, but we make do. I'm going live on YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, Instagram, and it's really, really good to have you guys on the show. A very special solo show. Now, we've only done this once before, never live, because this is only our 5th episode going live. And one thing to get out of the way, that episode was really... this is when we were doing pre-recorded shows, heavily edited down, like heavily. I was editing 5 hours at a time, just cutting out likes and ums and various mouse farty things that go on the episode. And just so you know, that was hell on earth. Now we've just kind of kept it more organic, but I do a little trimming here and there, some compression, some silence truncation. It really still does shave off like 20 minutes off of every episode, and obviously I can talk forever because I'm a New Yorker. This is what we do. But yeah, just I guess we're gonna start off the show, and to kick it off, I've got an intro for you. It's an extra super long intro. And I'm not expecting heavy participation, but I much appreciate it. With that, time to get started. So, welcome back to a special solo episode of Squawking Dead. It's me, Dave, your solitary host for the evening. If you've been paying attention to the last few episodes of Squawking Dead, it's clear that Carol's interest in Fear the Walking Dead has waned the closer we get to The Walking Dead airing, to the point where we both agree that if she couldn't even spend the energy to take some muster a righteous burn against it, then she might as well use the extra time to spend bringing home the bacon, or channel that energy she would normally use for the show towards spending time with her family, or with her kids and stuff like that. And it's October, it's Halloween season, And for parents with small children, it's kind of bigger than Christmas, right? So what I'd like to try to do with this episode, depending on how it goes, is give you a chance to get your headsets ready, because if the banter is good enough, I'll send you a link to join me on the podcast. We're almost a year into Squawking Dead, and we're extremely open to new ideas. Even having guest hosts on, and you never know, something like this might lead. So perhaps a co-hosting in all future episodes of Fear the Walking Dead is in your future. Change of career opportunity for you. It's also our last podcast before we go full throttle into The Walking Dead Season 9. So it's our 30th episode. The 31st will be our The Walking Dead Season 9 episode. And a little bit of housekeeping is kind of like in order. Basically, for those of you who've been watching the Fear the Walking Dead, it's a perfect opportunity to kind of go through the season, match it up with the season finale, basically take stock of the entire season. And it's probably a good way to kind of just close it, bookend it really nicely before we move on to The Walking Dead. So while you're dusting off your headsets, take a minute to like, subscribe, ring that bell for notifications, and follow us so you're always on top of any news, blog posts, and overall fun stuff. Did that sound too advertising? Yeah. Well, that's what happens. But yeah. So just so you know, we don't really like post a lot of stuff on Instagram that often, or Facebook, or even the Twitters. It's kind of like a couple times a week, usually on average, and really just to kind of get the word out on the next podcast, or when it goes out on Apple, Google Play Music, and SoundCloud and all that stuff. But obviously if you do subscribe, if you do like, and if you do follow us on Instagram, at least, you do get notifications when we go live. So that's kind of brilliant. And as a result, you kind of get a notification when we pop on. You'll also get notifications when a new, an edited podcast goes up and stuff like that. It's mostly just for that. So our worst posting schedule has been the last 24 hours. A lot's happened. We have to get the graphics and the website ready for the season, the Walking Dead season. I just lost my Instagram chat just now, so I can't even see what you guys are doing. Things are breaking down. The center cannot hold. I mean, I'll tell you what I'm seeing right now. My screen is flashing hard right now. Like, it's like every time I speak a little too loudly, maybe the screen kind of just, my two screens just flicker on and off. My YouTube stream is for shit right now. It's like I'm in like some sort of bad 4D movie ride, except this is my life. This is the podcast. So I'm going to try to actually get my chat window up. It's not coming up, but assuming that I'm just going to do a quick check on Instagram to see if I'm actually streaming live. So beg your pardon. This is uber professional. I mean, I thought I did all the testing I needed to do last week when we threw up a pre-recorded episode of episode 29. So yeah, okay. It looks like I'm still. There you go. You can hear that. So I guess I still am around. So apologies to Instagram. I don't have the chat window up. I wish I did. So I could see your interactions. But if you do have something to say, you could say it on the YouTube channel or the Facebook channel, or the Facebook Live. I have those up. Those will come in clear text and emojis anyway. So if you guys have anything to react to, that would be the best place to kind of hit me up. So I'm going to pull up my notes. And what I'd really like to do is kind of just go through the episode, get your takes, get your feedback, and see where we go from here. So we start off the episode with Althea basically trying to escape the hospital. It seems like she was hiding out at a post office, and she's just trying to figure out where the gang went, and because she lost battery on her walkie. And lo and behold, we find Martha. Oh man, my notes are out of order. This is what you get when you do note taking late at night the night before, and I have to tell you, I've just way too many notes. It's a point of criticism that anybody could really have with me. And let's bring that up here. Yeah. Okay. Now, she heads back to the hospital after hiding at the post office, and the first thing she encounters, has no idea what's been going on this whole time, doesn't know about the crisis on the roof, doesn't know what it took to get them to escape, all that stuff. The cheerful, cheesy kind of return to pick up Morgan, all of that stuff is lost now, Althea. And what we've got basically Althea that knows nothing, runs back to the hospital. One thing about Althea that I'll say is that she's kind of like an inspiration in a weird way. Oh man, my thing is going crazy. She basically is kind of like the biggest badass on the show aside from Morgan, if you really think about it. I mean, both people are kind of like outsiders if you really kind of take stock on what their moves have been. Althea's kind of more with it. I think she's when you really kind of take stock of Althea herself, is she was used to living in a war zone, or living in war zones, kind of living on her own, never really making any attachments. And she was like that before and after the apocalypse. So when you break it down, you see that she's a badass bitch. And Morgan, I don't know what life was like for him before the apocalypse, but, he had his kid, he had his wife. And, Althea's in it to win it. Now, I think both the people I'm talking about, as a result of what they've been through, Althea throughout her life, she's gotten used to it, and Morgan, he's been getting used to it. It's kind of like a recipe, because you have a situation where, like, what does it take for somebody on the outside to come back to the inside and realize that they've been missing out on people? And Morgan's kind of getting used to it, but Althea actually, when we really kind of get down to it, she's used to people, so she can interact with them, but she's not really used to being around people or like being a part of people. So it's kind of one thing I noticed when I watched the episode for a third time and started doing notes last night. And it's something to kind of take into stock as you go through the episode, because it's kind of important, because the two people that stand out the most in this episode are going to be Althea and Morgan, because these two people kind of exemplify the two last people to kind of really speak their truth unnecessarily. Althea never really gets a chance to speak it out loud, kind of like everybody else, the things she advocates throughout the season. However, she does go through something, and you do kind of notice it in the show. It's very subtle. It's not even mentioned in Talking Dead, but you do see like signs of her, signs of basically the writers basically trying to show that she's an outsider, show that she's not really a part of the group. And again, apologies for the people who are popping onto Instagram just now. I can't really see what you're saying, but I hope you're listening. If you do want to say something, I really encourage it, because I am going solo tonight. Head on over to YouTube or Facebook, and you'll be able to catch me there. And we're just going over Althea and Morgan, because these are the two main people I really want to focus on this episode. So the first thing she sees when she heads to the hospital and turns around with her shotgun is Walker Jim. Again, not knowing where anybody is, what anybody's doing. She basically, that's the first thing she sees is Walker Jim. Now, she didn't expect it. She didn't know he was even bitten. But there he is, rocky like a hurricane. And she's kind of confronted with that and Martha at the same time. But she kind of quickly snaps into it, and she's basically not about to do Martha's bidding, as Martha wants to leave Morgan a message. But the interesting interaction that you have with Martha and Althea is that she recognized the things that I'm kind of saying about Althea in this episode, is that she is an outsider, but she doesn't need help. She can carry her own. She knows what she's doing. She must have watched all the tapes, and she gets the idea that Althea can take care of herself. You know, she was able to take care of herself right from the beginning before the apocalypse. She's never needed help. And really, if you do go by the tapes and not by real life interactions from this entire season, you would get the picture that Martha's painting about Althea, that she's self-involved, that she really does anything that she needs to do around her subjects to do what she needs for herself, and doesn't really rely at all from the tapes, just reviewing those, on others to carry her own. She has her van, she has her wits, she has her skills, she has those fist daggers that she has, and she's able to take care of herself. And you know, you could easily take that scene on its own and say, why would Martha, you know, why would she spare Althea? But if you really think about it, crazy people got their own rules. So I think at the end of the day, you kind of have to take it on gospel that this is what's going on and this is what it's all about. But I mean, you kind of got to give crazy some credence at the same time. And part of that is really kind of analyzing the situation. It's kind of like laying out Althea's life according to the tapes, which is basically Martha's entire perspective. And again, she's an educator. She'll pick up on things, you know, so when she sees a subject and she has to basically teach it, I think she has a good read on people, try to assess people. I think that's what she's been doing since the beginning of the apocalypse. And it's kind of what we do see when she reveals a little bit of her life pre making people stronger. And it's that we had the impression that maybe the stuff that was going on with her and her husband Hank on the side of the road at mile marker 54 was already in medias res of the apocalypse. But it happens to be that when we cut away to the walker she had killed way down when Stevie the trucker was leaving the boxes, apparently she'd been out there for a really long time, which kind of furthers my theory or of what I wish they had done with Martha's character to kind of tie the entire season together, is that I kind of wished that Martha was responsible. And I mentioned this in the podcast last week, but since I have a little bit more of an audience, I kind of want to mention it today. I kind of wish they spent a little bit more time. First of all, this is something Carol had said, and I absolutely agree, is that I wish they'd spent more time fleshing out the period of time between Martha losing Hank and Martha meeting Stevie the trucker. Because if that was the time period between her falling into madness and then all the way, I mean, or who knows when Stevie the trucker came around and started, you know, happened to drop off that box on mile marker 54. The thing about that is that we really don't know. We don't know if this is in the beginning. All we know is that it was the time it took for a walker body to go absolutely dead, or absolutely like bones almost. And who knows how long that was at the oh, thanks, Sean. Hey, nice call, buddy. That's Nashville Negan, everybody. And so yeah, so that's the thing about that. So the one thing that I kind of wanted them to kind of utilize is maybe just a time anchoring device, possibly, is having Martha actually having started the fire that took out Mel and Ennis's farm, their family farm. I mean, you kind of expected it to be Ennis and Mel that started the fire. We all had that suspicion, kind of like going into it. Oh, typical like horror scenario. You have the two boys, one of them's a bad boy and started the fire. But nothing really came of that. And having Martha start the fire kind of links up everything. I mean, it makes her responsible for everything. It ups the stakes to an absurd degree. And, you know, if you'd fleshed that out right, you could have made this villain a lot more formidable, challenged the idea of the kind of person that could be saved. And maybe Morgan would still go after her. You never know. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like, well, maybe they didn't want to take the risk. Maybe they didn't want to go too big. I mean, Martha's already stretched being as crazy as she is. But given the fact that, you know, we don't really know what led to the way she kind of ended up. Really, not really. I mean, you kind of got the sense of it, but it's not enough time passing. So, yeah, so we see Althea escape basically, and of all things that she ends up finding, oh, actually, you know what? You're right. I was right the first time. Althea's escape was right from the beginning. She ends up finding the news van with the camera of all things, and yeah, and before Martha basically passes out from Martha's blow with her bow staff, Martha, you basically get the sense that she's almost done for. But when she wakes up in June in John's van, you kind of like she even got the impression that, oh, psychopath bitch basically likes me. So what does that say about me? And that's kind of like what I was saying before. I think all of this starts to plant a seed in Althea about how, her interaction with Martha is kind of like a seed that gets planted in Althea. Not just Althea, but us, but mostly Althea, about how the rest of the world views her as an outsider. She gets what she wants, goes off into her corner, and she realized that perhaps like Morgan, that she needs to be with people. We never see that more than when she rewatches the tapes, just like June did to John, realizing that she could have connected more with her subjects. And you do see this at the end of the episode, that she's doing anything to connect with somebody. And you also kind of get the sense, obviously we had that interaction between her and June, but you get the impression that, yes, she had people she cared about, but really, when you think about it, did she really interact with her subjects? I think in her own weird way, she cared for them, and maybe she kind of protected them the way, off camera, obviously, the way she does with this group. But in as much as they're a subject, I think maybe being with our group right now was probably the only time she had really bothered getting more involved. Like, after all, when they were trying to finish off the vultures, you have people calling her out. She doesn't want to get involved. She doesn't want to get involved with the subject. But she's like, if you help us out, you can get more of the story. We can continue on with the rest of the story. And there's a little bit of manipulation there, but at the same time, she's getting involved. It's not just about, it's not only about the story at a certain point. It can't be. She has layers after all. But yeah, another thing to notice aside from the camera that she happens to pick up, the one thing that happens to be in this parking garage, is that the very car she ends up using to get to Martha uses, and it's a police car. The quintessential, what we classically normally think of as help. You call for help, you call the police, right? So I thought that was kind of an interesting choice to use. Obviously there are lots of police cars in the apocalypse, but in a hospital parking garage. But the idea of Althea taking it to around where the hospital is, Martha taking that cruiser from her, Martha takes that all the way to mile marker 54. And by the time she meets up with Morgan takes the same cop car. It's the same usage of the police cruiser all throughout the episode, practically, until it really couldn't be used anymore. There's a lot of poetic license being thrown around when help is being, the vehicle for help is being used to, cruise around the entire episode by an outsider sandwich. Martha, Althea, and Morgan. So that it's really kind of interesting to see the different ways that they use it. And by the end of it, when Morgan is basically using, basically has Martha in tow, and that vehicle for help gets trashed. This is basically Martha's ultimate plan. It's useless now. And it kind of solidifies the point that there's a lot of foreshadowing in this episode when it comes to this, the way it was going to end up going down with Martha. It was never going to go the way that she had planned it. And I think we all I think most of us probably knew that. I think Morgan was going to have to make a choice at some point, and maybe it wasn't quite the way we thought it would be. But I think in our heart of hearts, there being a season 5, if Morgan was going to go out the way he was going to go out, let's say Morgan dies or had died, The way it goes down, the way it would have gone down would probably be in a way that he saw, at least found some sort of peace, because I don't think that would sit well with viewers much at all. So, yeah, I mean, one way or the other, it wasn't going to go the way Martha planned, because I don't think that sends the right message about the apocalypse. I mean, especially going into what's going to end up being a really complex The Walking Dead season 9. So, you know, that's just the way I feel about it. So yeah, John and June. So let's see here. So professional. Okay, so everybody's kind of like gathered around in this kind of tree growth in the middle of a field at night in the dark around a fire. And Morgan's kind of describing Alexandria and basically how things are going to end up going for the next 12, how things are going to move forward, how they're going to get to Alexandria, what they're going to do. And he mentions that the first thing that he wants to do, because he does want to continue doing the care boxes, is head over to the Polar Bears truck stop in Mississippi, the Flip Flop truck stop. And he wants to continue leaving care boxes all the way down to towards Alexandria. And in the process of kind of settling things over, Morgan decides to take the night shift so that, so that basically he can do his own thing afterwards. And John kind of picks up on his attitude right away. He knows he's being squirrely, and he kind of meets him in the middle of the night. And what's really interesting about that scene is, first of all, hats off to Adam Sushitsky, because the guy knows how to cinematically paint a scene. As John is kind of standing facing Morgan, Morgan's basically squatting and playing with his bow staff and the ground, kind of like a child almost, like, I'll do it myself. I mean, literally, if I was a religious man, I'd say, God bless John, because the way the rays of light kind of shoot through the trees, the moonlight kind of shoots through the trees and bathes John with this kind of, really cool glow and everything. It's just such a really perfectly framed shot, and it was just worth noting, because it's just kind of it's just kind of beautiful, and it kind of paints John as this, obviously the way cinema works is that it's not enough to have the lines and have the look and have the convincing stare, but sometimes scene painting just goes a long way. And what John is kind of really convey is, we've been through this before. He's willing to go through these kind of motions with Morgan over and over again to kind of just show everybody how loyal a person he is. Now, what he doesn't do is try to disrespect Morgan. He doesn't try to go past his charge, basically. He doesn't try to shoot above his head and try to make him do things. It's kind of like, think of the differences between the way the cast of The Walking Dead acts towards people versus the way, and especially Morgan, versus the way this crew, this Fear the Walking Dead crew, reacts towards Morgan. They kind of hold him in a higher regard. They respect his decisions. They'll challenge him, but they're really appreciative and really loyal to him as well. And the one thing that shouldn't go past anybody's notice is how respectful they are of his decisions, no matter how much they want to challenge him. And and you could regard their standoffishness as a sort of, he's an outsider, I shouldn't expect too much from him. You could do that. You could get away with that. But I think there's a tremendous amount of respect for Morgan. The way he's managed to kind of weave his way into people's hearts, and do incredible things for them. Like the thing that he did with Alicia at the stadium, basically preventing her from getting June in the end. Her quest for vengeance to kind of kill everybody, the Vultures and June and Charlie probably. But that's the thing. Like, with doing so little, in subtle ways and in huge ways, Morgan took some interesting at-bats with the group. and his batting average is really high, and people do respect that. And especially the kind of friendship that he's developed with John, it's kind of afforded John a little bit more leeway. He feels like he could speak up more, and he does speak up. And he wants to let Morgan know that we've been through this before. You went at it alone. You almost got yourself killed. And even though he goes through the motions, giving him solid reasonings of why he shouldn't do it, he recognizes something with Morgan. And he says, and he knows that he has to do this sort of thing alone. He knows that there's a part of him that's kind of stuck, and he needs to get himself unstuck, and of all people to kind of understand that, I mean, John would. John understands what it means to kind of sequester yourself for the sake of trying to, not really hurt anybody else, or to really sequester himself to kind of, be a protector in his own way by protecting other people from him. So when it comes down to it, he gets it. Now, let's see here. Sorry, I have to go through my notes. So, yeah. John basically says, it comes down to kind of like saying, there's some fish you just have to leave be. And that's adorable. And the bottom line, he in the process of appealing to him, he says, you might as well be the fish. Instead of the fish that, basically Martha's got the pull, and that Morgan fish is tasty. And, basically, the one thing that really, one thing that's really not obvious that I want to make obvious as a result of this conversation is that despite going through all emotions, despite, not despite, but kind of in spite of the respect they kind of have with each other, they, the one thing that really, the real takeaway from this conversation is that, is that as opposed to Morgan basically, there's a lot of comparisons to the way Morgan reacted to Henry back in The Walking Dead season 8. The idea that he might have turned when he ran away, and when he let all those people out of the pen, and he almost got trampled and run over. Henry did not want to know Morgan did not want to know Henry's fate. I bring this up a lot during the season, and it makes sense because Morgan was so warped about the idea of finding Henry as a walker. He didn't want to find out if he was dead or alive. So he kind of just made up any excuse to not have to look for him. And the one takeaway to kind of really bring it home how adjusted John is that no matter what, he wants to know what happens to Morgan. Because the thing is that they're all going to meet at Polar Bear's truck stop, and what he says is that we're going to wait we're going to wait 48 hours. If you're not there in 48 hours, I'm going to come looking for you. I ain't going anywhere without you. And the most important takeaway from all this is that in spite of how he might find Morgan, he's going to find him either dead or alive, but he's going to find him. And I thought that was kind of important too. It kind of shows the lengths to which people care about him, the right way to do things. Carol tried to show that to him as well, and she tried to express that too. And seeing Henry alive does kind of change Morgan in a way, because we don't see like a killbot Morgan as a result of that conversation with Carol. So I think that does change things a little bit. Let me see here. Gotta pull up my boots. So, yeah. Okay, so yeah, he's on his way to meet Martha and Mindy. And again, bring up the idea of the fork in the road. That T in the road where he can go left or right, and Martha says she's at mile marker 54, basically where it all began. It kind of represents the kind of choices that Morgan has, and he ends up meeting her there. But let's take a stop at the flip-flop truck stop. Yeah, the one thing to notice also, planting a seed, everybody's trying to recharge their batteries, their proverbial batteries. Charlie's brushing her teeth, and something to note is that, yes, everybody's kind of tried to do their own thing, but Althea's kind of still hustling. She's on her own, loading up the guns and ammo and, her turret guns. And again, she's kind of doing her own thing. And what's interesting about that is that the guys at the truck stop, as they're trying to recharge, you got Luciana, Strand, and Alicia. They're all looking at Polar Bear's map, and they're already kind of discussing maybe not going to Alexandria. They're kind of trying to find reasons to maybe stay, find a new reason to live that doesn't involve having to take that long trip. And I thought that was kind of an interesting scene to kind of put in. Like, I guess they're trying to say, maybe we're not ready to let go. Maybe we're not ready to kind of give up on this place. But the more they think about it, and throughout the season, they've been like dropping seeds and hints that, even from the second episode, I have to say, or was it first episode? Yeah, I think it might have been the first one. With Leland and the Pilferers, basically, where Morgan basically, as John said, almost got himself killed. You start to understand that there's nothing out there. Things are dire. The vultures did not make things any better. So any people that are left around, they're probably scattered and holed up. All the other people are either corralled up walkers with numbers on them, indicating how many there are. There are people in sparse locations. There's not enough food everywhere. Things are running out.